Good evening and welcome to Frankly Speaking, where truth is our mission, reality our realm, said as we see it and frankly as well. 3,000
but it's the
hot
next
box.
iteration of an existing system.
But it's a design, it's not manufacturing anything.
I think there should be, there are restrictions. You have to be licensed to carry a weapon.
Addiction, and I think that if we took a more compassionate approach, we might find more of a solution.
Radical swing of the pendulum. Now we're, more liberal, more progressive, more.
It's time for us to honor those folks who, send comments to us. And good evening and welcome to Frankly Speaking, where truth is our mission, rally our realm, said as we see it and frankly as well. And that's a good tie-in because our special guest today, frankly, is Frank Cousins, Sheriff of Essex County. Nice to have you here.
Thank you, Joe. It's good to be here today.
I love your tie.
Thanks.
You're retiring.
Yeah, I'm getting done in January.
I understand that young son of yours is a pretty good football player.
He is. He had a good game yesterday. Threw a couple of passes and caught a few, so a little fun.
Oh, excuse me, a quarterback, huh?
Well, they give kind of that Julian Edelman play. They pitch it out to him, and he flips it down the field, so it was kind of
Oh, the old, yeah.
Yeah.
You were there for 20 years.
Yeah.
And appointed by Weld
Yes, I was.
after Charlie Reardon got in a little difficulty.
Yeah.
You've made some changes that you're kind of proud of. I'm interested in this detox center that you did on campus, as a matter of fact, right?
Yes. Yeah. We opened it December 7th, and it will be open pretty much about a year. We're going to service probably close to 500 people, a little bit over 500 people this year. But the best thing, Joe, is you're seeing results. People that are out on the streets will come up to me and say, hey, I was in a detox for 28 days. I went back in front of the judge. I had my case adjudicated. I'm on probation now. It gave me a chance to catch my breath.
Isn't that the key, giving someone a chance, a second chance, another try at it? That's what you basically do it.
Absolutely. And I think that's what the best part about that job is to help some people turn their lives around. And as you know, most of the crimes are quality of life crimes that
Right.
They commit, and they can't help themselves because they're on heroin or drugs or alcohol, and I think that's one of the big roles to try to really help people. My mother used to say, you get up every day, if you can help one person, you've accomplished something.
Another thing that I noted, that you did a regional center, some type of intercommunication that you're very proud of also.
Yeah. We were asked to do that by Governor Duval Patrick, and he came to us, and there's 5 cities and towns that are included in it. And more importantly, as you know, cell phones are growing, and the old hard lines are kind of falling away of the Etzel. And we take every cell phone call in Essex County in that center, plus over half of Middlesex County, and Chelsea and Winthrop from Suffolk County. So it's a very busy call center.
I guess.
Yeah.
You mentioned the Essel folks, and you're in the car business many years ago.
I was for about 9 years. Yeah, I was in the car business.
I hope you didn't have too many Etzels.
No, we didn't have too many Etzels. But I enjoyed it. I was in the Dodge and Chrysler products.
And at times, I understand that some of your folks get a hold of you and say, "Hey, by the way, can you help me out with a purchase of an automobile?"
It's funny. I had a couple people the last couple weeks. They asked me questions about cars and give them a little advice, and and it's always good to do that.
So even though you're not quite sure of what the future has for you, there's obviously you're a popular guy. Politically, you can pick and choose. You can accept, I'm sure you've been offered, that Baker has offered you positions in the administration.
Yeah.
But you really want to take a little breather now and reorient yourself.
I do. I'm very fortunate. I teach at Merrimack College.
Yeah, I was going to, very good. By the way, what do you teach at Merrimack?
This semester I've got an undergrad course, which is great, Introduction to Criminal Justice. I got 25 students, great group of kids. So I'll be there this semester, and then I'll have a master's course in the winter session. So I'm looking forward to doing like three courses a year, and that's a good piece for me. And plus, they want to be there. They're young and they've got great ideas, and so I enjoy that. And I've been very fortunate. About 12 years ago, I was on a bank board. I was appointed to the Provident Bank, and about a year and a half ago, we went commercial. And so I've been promoted to the governance committee. I'm the chairman of that, and I'm very active on my bank board.
So retired but not retired.
Yeah, so kind of half and half, you know.
Transition.
Yeah.
That's what they call it. You know, I know a number of folks who, well, let me, first of all, let's do a little stats. 600 employees?
Yes, to be exact, 620 right now.
And about 2,000 inmates.
Just under 2,000, absolutely.
Your minimum security, correct?
Yep, minimum security. Yep.
And what I'm fascinated by, this is not Dodge City. Let's talk about the sheriff of Essex County. People, you're not out chasing Robin Hood and stuff like that, right?
No, we don't go out and, you know, we have people, as you know, that work for us that do that task force work. They help over here in Lynn. They help with the DEA, but that's not the sheriff's job. You don't want to be out doing that. The sheriff's job it's really a leadership position. You want to set the tone of what the vision is for the department and really implement those missions that the department's going to do. If it's around drug treatment or it's about rehabilitative services, task force work, care and custody of inmates. So those are the things you try to really focus on.
When centuries ago, when I sat on Ward 2 Council, there's a place called Spring Pond. And young kids, being young kids, put a keg of beer out there on the weekends and make a lot of noise, and people get upset, so they call their ward counselor to adjudicate the problem, using your word. The problem was that Spring Pond is a tri-city area. And I remember that the Sheriff's Department wanted to send in, mention the task force, to kind of scare the kids out of there, but they couldn't. Their jurisdiction was limited. Unless I got permission from the chief of police of all three communities, Lynn, Salem, and Peabody, they couldn't come in. And then you ran into union problems because they didn't want your guys coming in thinking that they're being, so you had to face those contingencies all of the time, that balancing act, didn't you?
Yeah, and I think that was one of the things we kind of worked through. So, and we try to take the approach where when the chiefs of police get together as a group, like you just said, we'll help out and work with them together. We do it with the canines, we do it with the drug task force work, and I think that's the most effective way to do it. But you hit it right on the head. Everybody's got to be on the same page.
What happens, like I see a lot of your folks down on Lynn Shore Drive cleaning up, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
So that's state property, actually. Do you have to coordinate with the state in order to do that, the MDC?
What happens is the DOT, DCR, MDC, they'll call us daily, and we send out 4 litter crews a day. So they'll come from Lawrence, an officer will go with them, and they'll say, hey, go down to Lynn Shore Drive, they might be out on Route 1, wherever they tell us to go, and we'll go.
And no problems with the unions on that?
No, we've got through that. I think that it works out well. And I think a lot of people, understand that, there's nothing wrong with having people that are trying to get better to do a little work.
Get out in the sunshine, do a little work, you're right. That's a good idea.
Absolutely.
Now, it's interesting because generally speaking, people take a look at, here's where I started. Now, 20 years went by rather quickly, by the way.
Very quickly.
And when you take a look back, I'm sure that you feel that it's a little better than it was when you got it.
Yeah, and I think that's all I wanted to do. When I got there, there was a lot of difficulties. I think that we set a course, we tried to follow that and get some things accomplished. And I looked at it this January and I said, do I want to be there for another full 6 years? What's the best thing for 600 plus employees? And I felt the best thing to do was, I didn't want to be there for 6 years. I didn't want to get into the special election cycle thing for the employees. I said, look, I made a decision not to run again. What I wanted to do and accomplish, you can't do that in 20 years. It's time to move on,
Let me ask, are you putting together some type of transition for whomever is successful?
Yes, we did. We were very fortunate. We brought Pat Bradley in back in, we had brought him back in May, and Pat was a former superintendent, special sheriff in Norfolk County, Suffolk County, and he's in the private sector. He has been for a number of years. So we brought him in to work on transition with us. We'll have a nice public transition document for whoever the new sheriff is, and we'll work closely with them after the November election.
I don't want to pin you down, but I am going to pin you down. What are the 3 things that you would like to see your successor follow up on?
I think the number one thing is to make sure that these detoxes continue to stay open, and we work closely with the court.
So you're really proud of that program.
Very, very important because it saves lives, Joe.
Exact, good right. And it's a really serious problem.
It's a serious problem. Every family member that I talk to has somebody that has a problem with drugs or alcohol.
Next.
The next thing I think, which is very important, is the hiring process of hiring good people and really keeping the workforce feeling good about themselves, which I think is very good. I mean, we've gone 7 years without a grievance or an arbitration case, which is really unheard of in Massachusetts.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So I think that's a good thing for the person to shoot for and to really stay focused on.
Any other?
And the third thing, I think the best thing is, just trying to help people and really, keep the integrity of the department intact. I think that's one of the things we've really been proud of. I think all the employees are proud of it. And you look at that from a vision standpoint, I think that's key.
You made yourself quite active and visible in the district in Essex County. I remember the old Danversport?
Yes.
One of the great gatherings of all time. Everybody had to be there, right?
Yeah.
And
We used to have over 1,100 people come to those, yeah.
But they had a good time, and there was cross-section. I mean, the one thing about Frank Cousins is you transcend party affiliation. Both sides of the aisle seem to say nice things about you. Tea Party likes you also, which is unheard of, And yet, there was a critique of you from a Village Patriot, I believe the name of it is. And it fascinated me because if so many different quarters had positive things to say about the way the Sheriff's Department's been conducted over the last 20 years, then why is this lone critical voice? You're always going to find one. So I'm going to put you on the spot and have you respond to it because, if someone says something, it should be clarified.
Yeah, I think the good thing, I've always tried to be open and transparent, and sometimes the toughest thing about this job as sheriff is you got to say no to someone.
Oh.
And anytime you say no, sorry I can't do this, sorry I can't support you, sorry I can't give you a job, this is the way it has to be, this person cannot be involved in work release or whatever it might be. I think that's the unique thing about that job. You have to say no. Sometimes when you're a rep at a center, I can get back to you, let's talk about it. When you're the sheriff, you can't do that. And occasionally you'll find people who get upset about it and they might fire off, but hey, that's unfortunately in government, that happens.
Frank, I think you should get into media myself. I love the way your mannerism, the way you handle yourself, that's where you should go. Forget this other stuff, WRKO or a place like that, get a nice little talk show going. Sensibility is something that's needed today, that type of dialogue.
It's really important. You look at what's going on across our country, and I talk about it a lot, and I just think people want someone to come up with some solutions and try to work on things.
How about a little bit of honesty? You mentioned transparency. Yeah. How about just saying it like you said? Yeah. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to lay it out here. I'm going to make mistakes. Yeah. Move on.
Yeah, and I think that's all people really want today. And doing something. We go back to the detox thing. I look at that and I says, look, we're going to do this and get it accomplished. And some people say, hey, we shouldn't be detoxing people in prison. I says, well, what are we supposed to do? Let them come in and spin dry and then go back out and a week later do the same thing again and come back and forth or end up dead? So I think that we have to do something in government. Government should be proactive.
Of course. I mean, that's one of its purposes. Yeah. And not dependency. It shouldn't be something that you do for the rest of your life, but it's a bridge.
That's right.
That's what you're talking about.
Absolutely. And I think when you look across what happens in our county, we look at underperforming schools, entitlements, getting people working, getting people feeling good about themselves. Those are important things, important function for government.
I'm not familiar with crime figures, but do you have any crime figures that you can talk to us about in Essex County versus other years?
Yeah, I think the best thing that we've done, we have a statistician that we brought in about 6.5 years ago, and he has a gal that works with him, and we track people when they leave prison. And one of the unique things that I find is about 55% of the men after 1 year do not return to a life of crime or drugs, which is very, very important. So I think Sheriff's Departments, jails, House of Correction, you have to track that. That's key today. And you can look at it and see what's working, what's not, you can make some changes. The other thing we've been really kind of drilling down on I don't know if you've heard of Roper or not, but they're involved a little bit here in Lynn and Chelsea, is we're looking at 18 to 24-year-old boys, and we just started working on that the last 8 or 9 months. Really last summer I put some time into it. 18 to 24-year-old boys, I have 76 of them in Middleton right now today. They can't go to Lawrence to the farm because they're very aggressive and assaultive. 55% of them have not graduated from high school, so we don't know what happens with that, Joe. About 72% of them are minorities, Hispanic or black boys. Big problem. So we're kind of looking at some of that stuff, and I think the statistics can help us with that, try to find some solutions to that, which is a real problem. We're seeing that not just here in Essex County, but across the country.
But interestingly, you said 70 some odd?
76. Right now.
76, the Spirit. But that's against a population of 2,000. That's really a small number.
Yeah, it is, but it is a small number, but that group, if you think of 76, 18 to 24 boys that can't go to a pre-release facility because of assaultive or aggressive behavior, haven't graduated from high school, minorities, and you take that snapshot and you start to look at it around the Commonwealth or the country, that identifies a trend and a problem where we're getting a lot more of these boys. And how are we going to change them? You know, what are you going to do with them? And so we're starting to look at that.
That's an interesting point because there was a comparison made between Cairo, Egypt and Cairo, Illinois. And what happened is they said they have a problem with that age group that you're talking about, males, almost being superfluous. They're not educated, they have no place to go, and they get in the type of difficulty you're talking about. So it's interesting that you're proactive on that program.
Yeah, and we really looked at that, and you hit it right on the head. It doesn't matter if it's Cairo, Illinois, Gary, Indiana, Ferguson, Lawrence, Mass, unfortunately, Dorchester, Roxbury, Mattapan, that little pocket where we have some problems. So Baltimore, Maryland. And I think those are things that we have to do a better job in this country at, looking at that and trying to keep some of these kids out of jail.
Do you happen to Rolodex all of the chief of police in Essex County?
Yeah, we're very fortunate, and I should mention that, Joe. I mean, we got 34 chiefs of police, plus the major troop headquarters in Danvers. District Attorney John Blodgett, myself. I think that's one of the strong points of Essex County. Other parts of the state cannot say that, where everybody is working together and on the same page. And I think that's important. That's a credit to all of them, plus John Blodgett and Major Shagru.
That's an important point. So you're communicating with each other, you've gotten woven together, you have good relations with each other, so that you're able to go to Lynn Shore Drive or go to wherever to clean up without, and actually give the kids an opportunity, your inmates an opportunity to better themselves.
I think this whole reentry initiative and stepping down people is a way of the future and correction. I think you hit it on the head. And if you're not communicating with the chiefs of police and DA and state police, where people are going, what they're doing, you're going to have more of the same.
One of our local favorites here, I don't know if you realize it or not, that his ancestor was the actual first governor of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Tom Goff.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't know it either until he was on the show before you.
Yeah.
You know, he retired before you, by the way.
Yeah, he worked with me for years.
Yeah.
Great guy.
Yeah, and so, of course, he had to beat his chest about the fact that the original governor of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts was Thomas Goff.
I didn't know that.
Huh? You learn something here on Frankly Speaking every time.
Yeah. Tom's got a good bloodline. He's got good health. He looks great, too.
He does, and he hits the ball pretty good. You, by the way, you're a pretty good golfer yourself, aren't you?
Well, not as good as Tom, but I like to get out and play a little bit. I played the other day, so it's kind of fun.
Are you going to keep yourself active in terms of, will you stop by the sheriff's office to offer you advice?
Yeah, I feel this way. When I leave on January 3rd, I think that I've left the place in better condition than I found it in. I'm going to be available if the new sheriff has a question or a comment, but I try not to butt in too much, you know, but I'm going to be active. I live in Newburyport, as you know. I'm very active in the community up there. I want to be active in the community, and I think that's important to stay.
You were a city councilor.
Yes, I was, yeah.
And from there, a state rep, and that's before you got appointed. So I'm assuming if you were state rep for 3 years, that means you got reelected.
Yeah, I got reelected up there for city council and state rep too, yep.
So you have a broad experience vis-a-vis political office.
Yeah, I've been very fortunate. I think that, I served in local government, state government, county government, as we say, and I mean, the unique thing about the office of sheriff is you can actually get something done, and I think that's a good thing that we have today.
I mentioned your son, the 14-year-old prospective NFLer. How many children do you have?
I just have one. Yeah, one. He'll be 15 tomorrow, the 13th of October.
Well, that's a great reason to want to go to a few of those ball games, huh?
Yeah, go to a few ball games. He's in school. He likes school. He used to come down here to play a little basketball over to St. Mary's because he went to the IC in Newburyport, the Immaculate Conception. So he likes basketball and football.
And here's another thing. Well, you're at Merrimack.
Yes.
Teaching at Merrimack. And I don't know if they do this any longer, but my son's over at Salem State. If you're teaching over there, your son gets a little bit of a tuition break or whatever, I believe. I don't know if that's still applicable. Better look into that, you know.
I should have brought that up. I wasn't thinking of that.
Yeah.
Because we're going to catch a little break on that.
Well, it's, you have to take advantage of all these things, by the way, you know. How do you like teaching?
I enjoy it. You know what I like is I like being around young people. You know, young people are always fun to be around. You can kind of get out of what you're doing every day, and they're interested. And they're interested in what I do for a job and my career. We talk about leadership. We talk about the criminal justice system. We get some great interns, as you know. I got a super fellow from Merrimack this year. Her name's Mary Murphy. She was in the master's program up there, and so she's working with our statistician department. So, you know, you get good young people in the workplace. You know?
Frank, I remember you when the pepper outdid the salt. And now that you have this nice look of maturity and wisdom that you're bringing to Merrimack, do you have any? By the way, what about Endicott, Salem? Could you are you eligible to teach?
Yeah, no, I've taught before and I like the community college level. I've been over here in Lynn at North Shore Community College, Northern Essex Community College, where I went. So I'll do some more of that. Maybe take another class on at Endicott, but it's fun.
So you're gonna stay active. That's it. I mean,
Stay active.
Retired but not retired.
Yeah. My father, it's funny, Joe, my father retired from the Navy Yard. He was 56 years old, and he lived till he was 81, so he had a great retirement. And, you know, I looked at it, you know, the hardest part about the thing is, you know, when it's time to go home and feel good about going home, you know? And so I took that approach.
Well, I'm pushing you for rep.
Well, you never know.
You know, yes, I'm glad you said that because, you know, look, I have to say it, I'm a partisan, folks. I think you all know that. I just think that someone like you, with the type of balance that you have and the way your perspective, it's really, almost a sin that you're not in public office any longer. But I commend you for your choice. And I welcome, come back anytime.
No, we'd love to come back down, and it's great, and it's good to be here, and like you say, it's dialogue is good in government. We need more of it.
Tell us where we can get that tie. That's the other thing before we go, you know.
I get this over at Macy's at North Shore Shopping Center.
I absolutely adore it.
Yeah.
And I want to thank the Sheriff Cousins for stopping in at our show. We're going to take a short break, and I think Paul Crowley, my co-host, is at the door over there. So we'll be right back.
You have the power to make this decision to quit smoking. It took me to get to a mature age where I understood that if I didn't stop, I was gonna put myself in the same position that my mother was in. And I wanted to make a choice while I still had the chance to be here for my daughter.
You can quit. For free help, call 1-800-QUIT-NOW.
I adopted Bento in 2010 from a shelter. This cat makes me make art. He's my best friend, but a lot of people know him as Keyboard Cat.
all things Paul Crowley. How are you?
Good, Joe. How are you?
Not bad at all.
Geez, sorry I missed a conversation with Sheriff Cousins. It's
Well, you were
always
tied
an
up.
interesting conversation.
You know, actually, you're going to be able to have him in my chair, or I'm going to have him in your chair, because when either or can't make it, he's our guest speaker.
He's actually
Guest host.
and very talented guest host too. I mean, he's got good command. I saw him at the end. Seems to really enjoy being on television. You know, in the media.
Oh yeah, he's good at it.
He's really got it down.
But you two have the great taste in ties.
Is that right? Was my tie on a par with his? Is that what you're saying?
Not bad.
No.
Paul, let me ask you something. Are you familiar with the word oligarchy?
Yes, I am.
So, Pedro.
So what is an oligarch? Let's make
Well,
sure that
Pedro's going
everybody-
to put that up on the screen so our folks know, because it's pertinent. It's probably the key to this election.
Right.
Because the choice is, do you want to be ruled by an oligarchy, which is currently what's happening,
Right.
or do you want to take it back and have a democracy?
Right.
That's the real choice in this election.
Right.
An oligarchy has been the chief enemy, has always been the chief enemy of the market, enterprise, science, truly competitive capitalism, and freedom. You got that, Paul?
I do, and I couldn't agree with you more. You know, and what's interesting is you always hear in the campaigns, especially from the Democrats, they talk about Russia and how you know, bad they are, and that they have these oligarchs that are running the country. You know, it's these business.
Same with China,
it's
right?
These billionaires that control all the levers of power in Russia, and you know, it's interesting that they say that. They say it creating an illusion that they're somehow different when in fact they're exactly the same, and it's probably more insidious because they're the same, but they pretend that they're not. That's the part that we have a
How
trouble.
about this one? You brought up Russia. Hillary's been pounding Trump over the head with being a fan of Vladimir Putin. All of a sudden, out of WikiLeaks, we find out, guess who really likes Putin?
She does.
She does.
Right.
Talk about hypocrisy.
And by the way, just by way of definition, for anybody who's unclear on the term oligarchy, it's kind of derivative of monopoly, oligarchy. Monopoly is controlled by one. Oligarchy is controlled by a few, right? I mean, and that's the key distinction here. And the few all control the levers of power in the United States. It's the media, it's Wall Street, and it's federal government.
It starts out, there's the cyclical effect, historically, in all societies and throughout civilization. Somewhere along the line, we end up with the people. That's called democracy. Now, it has its imperfections,
Yep.
because the rule, you know, the rule of majority can be tyrannical. But it's more inclusive democracy. And it degenerates over time into what they call oligarchy,
Right.
which is the rule of a few, which then degenerates into what you mentioned, autocracy, or the rule of the tyrant. But not necessarily so. If Jesus were the ruler of the world, goodness would prevail. So it all depends on the quality of the person who's the leader.
Right.
If they're flawed, you have a flawed government.
And make no mistake about it, all of the candidates are flawed. In this election,
Some of
probably
them.
more than others.
Well-
but not on the matters of leadership, at least as far as Trump is concerned.
Well, let me ask you this, because I've been thinking about this. They're really going after Donald Trump over a video, right?
The oligarchy needs to kill him. That's what they're trying to
But
do.
I haven't heard anybody wanting to take down JFK Airport or anything that has to do with the Kennedy name on it, when the entire family, Jack, Bobby, and Ted, were, you know, they didn't have very much respect for women, I'll tell you that right now.
No, that's right, yeah. But they're Democrats, so it doesn't matter. I mean,
What about Anthony Weiner?
Anthony Weiner, another Democrat. What about Bill Clinton?
Exactly. What about Lyndon Johnson? You go on and on and
Right.
on.
And by the way, we're talking about, you know, they said that you can't talk about Bill Clinton because that was prosecuted back in the 90s, right? This video that they're talking about is from 2005.
Yeah, that was back then, yeah. But it happens all the time. Grover Cleveland had an illegitimate kid.
Right.
So,
Apparently so did Bill Clinton.
There's someone out there claiming that. I'm not going down that road right yet until there's more definitive.
But can I just get back to something about that oligarchy that I really wanted to point out before you go on to your next point, and that is that the Clinton campaign, it's been shown through a leaked email of John Podesta's that Hillary Clinton declared in a private meeting with Goldman Sachs, I think it was Goldman Sachs, that she has to have a public point of view and a private point of view.
Yeah.
And what she's basically saying is, I'm going to tell you how I feel and that I'll take care of you guys. But when I go out there and you hear me talking, kicking the crap out of you guys, don't believe a word of it because I'm lying, is essentially what she said. There's a public persona and a private persona. And that's how she is able to, run as an oligarchy while pretending to be in the best interest of the democracy and the children and the women and all this nonsense. It's all about power with her.
20 years ago, when Sheriff Cousins was appointed by William Well to that position, William Safire, a highly respected journalist who had won Pulitzer Prizes,
Hillary Clinton is a
congenital liar.
Right.
There has not been anybody that's been around her, and every book that you read about her from all quarters, what is constant?
Right.
She has difficulty with the truth. Over and above that, her own campaign people say that she lies.
Right. And everything about her campaign is a lie, if you ask me, because she has to, every statement she makes, every joke she makes, every approach to an issue gets flushed out and vetted by loads and loads of staff. It's never about what she thinks, it's about what she's told to say.
I understand that.
Yeah.
But what about Donna Brazile? Brazile is how you say it.
Brazile?
Yeah. Who actually fed her questions, and they were exactly the same quotes, and she's denying it.
Right.
And she's the head of the Democratic Committee. What about John, was it Howard? Remember him from
that guy,
CNBC, who bragged about trying to trip up.
He was the presidential
Wait a
debate.
minute, why aren't they fired?
Immediately.
I mean, that's the issue. They should be fired. George Stephanopoulos should have been fired a long time ago from ABC.
Right.
So anybody that tells you, we've been saying this consistently, that the media is in the tank. It is so in the tank, it's disgusting.
Right.
And they ought to think about it. If you can put that back up, that graphic back up, Pedro, in the background you're going to see a herd of sheep. And let me tell you, folks, if you want to be in a herd of sheep, then you vote for the oligarchy, because that's what they do. Right. They're going to lead you to your slaughter. They're going to fleece you and slaughter you,
right.
and have mutton for supper. But yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous.
And you think about everything that we've been talking about over the last few months on the show about how you're not going to get the true news, the objective news from the network ABC, NBC, CBS, and CNN, and it's never been more obvious. I mean, all of the emails that have come out on this WikiLeaks exposure, they're saying a lot of disparaging things about themselves. In fact, all these people that are in the emails, they're indicting themselves by their words. But the biggest thing that comes out of it, in my view, is that the indictment is towards the media. The media does everything and anything it can to protect its candidates, and in this case, it's Hillary Clinton.
Do you know who the fellow was on that 205 tape along with Donald Trump? You know who that guy was?
The nephew of George H.W. Bush.
That's exactly right. His name is Billy Bush, okay? Okay. Right. Now, you think it's coincidence, or do you think perhaps the Bushes had their fingerprints all over that leak? Don't give me that.
I wouldn't say it's coincidence, but I don't think George H.W. Bush
Wait a minute.
exposed
They
it.
adopted Bill Clinton as their son, their prodigal son. Is that the right?
So what? And at the same time, they disavowed their nephew?
Yeah. And on top of it, let me give you the best one. By the way, they canned him. Billy Bush is bye-bye. Right. He's been canned. He's on leave, right? But not George Stephanopoulos, not John Howard, not Donna Brazile, and the rest of them, who are far more egregious than Billy Bush. And by the way, I think, and if you're honest about it, they were kind of half joking. I mean, it was, crude. I've said bad, dirty jokes
Well,
before.
you know, let me just tell you something. In 2005, and I'm not defending what he said
Right.
because it's indefensible, and I think that's the standard line that everybody's using, and I agree with that. But in 2005, Donald Trump was an entertainer who was competing with the likes of Howard Stern to be the most shocking in terms of his commentary. And that's how we made his living.
But
And-
was he flying around on the Alito Express with Jeffrey Epstein? Was he doing that?
No, and Jeffrey Epstein is a convicted pedophile, and he's good friends with Bill Clinton. So,
Well,
right.
my point simply being, he said things. You can, say that they're unqualified, and I agree with that, by the way. They're vulgar, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But they're words.
Right. The most important thing to understand here is that this is not an election about the character of Donald Trump. It's about the future of our country.
It's about the oligarchy running the show. Donald Trump is trying to make sure that these sheep don't get fleeced and become tonight's meal,
Right.
lamb stew or something. Because he's for democracy. Do you understand that?
That's right.
He's the populist. He's the nationalist. It's insane the way people have tortured reasoning and logic.
Right.
You may not like him, but that is the choice. If you want to be controlled by the few and ultimately by the one, don't forget, the Soviet Union and China are moving toward capitalism.
Right.
They're embracing capitalism. What are we doing?
Well,
We're going the opposite direction.
Well, you ever hear the term rent seeker? You know what that means, right?
Go ahead.
The rent seeker is kind of like the crony capitalist. They're looking to adapt rules or adjust the rules so that it will give them a competitive advantage over everybody else. And that's essentially what's been going on for years and years and years. Another thing that turns up in these emails is Goldman Sachs, a speech to Goldman Sachs. Hillary Clinton is saying, I want you to you know all about the banking rules. I want you to help me write them.
She wants to open up the borders. She wants 600 million people, which is North and South America, flowing back and forth easily.
Right.
So that we lose our national sovereignty, and that's another huge issue. Do people understand this?
Right.
How critical that is,
and
what it does to our standard of living?
But the important thing to understand is, just take a think about that. If we have open borders on either side, drugs and people can flow intermittently, guns, all that kind of stuff can flow intermittently. Who is that benefiting from an individual perspective?
The oligarchy.
That's it.
Right.
It's not benefiting the people. It isn't.
Oh, really, Paul?
Yeah.
This is the point. Now, choices. If we can throw up that choices graphic. Take a look at this. I mean, I have to tell you something. By the way, do you know they made a big issue out of Melania Trump's attire at the second debate?
She looked pretty good, didn't she?
Huh?
Oh, I'm not supposed to say that, am I?
Well, what happened was, the bow has a name to it, and they thought that was flagrant on her part. She was being suggestive, and I'm not going to say what that bow is called, but it begins with P. So
Right.
you go from there.
Right.
Oh, what kind of silliness does the media have? And because she walks in with a bow on and take a look at him. Take a look at his face.
The picture of Bill Clinton.
Yeah, because
that is the most striking. I've never seen that look on his face.
What is that a look of?
Fear and loathing.
Of what? Of the 4 women who were there,
Right.
who were his accusers, right?
Right.
All right. So they like throwing punches. They don't like him coming back.
Right.
So who do you want to see in the White House? You want to see that look, or do you want to see Melania? Who would you like to see for the next 4 years in the White House? Because that's your choice.
Donald Trump.
Yeah. So that's what it comes down to. And then if you take a look at the next graphic, which is just simple, the winner is.
You're talking about the debate, right?
Yeah.
That was the best debate I ever watched.
Right. And everybody, reluctantly, even the Democrats, admitted that Trump cleaned her clock, right?
It's the first time, and going back to when the Clintons came onto the national scene, so we talk back in the early 90s, right? Or maybe the late 80s. It's the first time that they have been called out as they should be called out. Donald Trump called them out, but the media never did it. They protected him all the time. And it's, and that's why you had that. Look, go back to that. Can you go back to that graphic, Pedro, of the picture of Bill Clinton? That's the first time he's ever looked like that, because that's the first time he's ever been called out.
He got caught what he really is.
Right, nobody's ever said a word about that.
The Star Wars defense shield that they're famous for
Right.
was revealed, as is happening with the WikiLeaks, by the way.
Right, and that's just going to continue to prove a point.
There was an article in what they call PJ Media, who comes from the Asia Times by a pseudonym named Spengler.
Spengler, right.
Who has said categorically, without a doubt, that Trump is going to win, and he says why he's going to win. Because Trump pointed out that she is sitting on $250 million that she never did a day's work at her husband, and they grabbed all that money after his presidency, and most of it when she was Secretary of State.
Right. Well, remember, when she left in 2000, she was dead broke, right?
Yeah, exactly. But wait a minute, let me go one step further. Now, he said to her during that debate, which is telling, why don't you use your own money? I'll put up $100 million of mine. Why don't you put up some of your money of your $250 million, and maybe you won't have to take special interest.
Right.
Well, folks, you got to understand that.
And she didn't respond.
That's exactly right. She did not respond. You know why?
She was shocked.
You know why?
She had no answer.
Exactly.
She had no answer.
That's exactly right. So, who represents the blue-collar worker? Who represents the coal miner? Who represents the steel worker? Who represents the people that work in hotels and the waiters and the waitresses?
And the people of Lynn.
Who actually represents them?
Donald Trump. And anybody in Lynn who thinks that Hillary Clinton is good for the city of Lynn is crazy.
But she's good for anything, because it becomes the oligarchy. That's the point. And so when you have folks like Paul Ryan coming out the very next day after he tattooed Hillary in that debate, without question, right? He has to open up his big mouth and put a wet blanket all over it, right? So this is coordinated from the Republicans at the same time. They don't want, you know why they don't want Trump? Because they're in bed in the oligarchy. They're part of the oligarchy.
Well, let me just say a lot of things.
Bye-bye, Republicans. I'm leaving the party as of tomorrow. I'm going to...
By the way, everybody, I'm an independent.
I'm leaving the Republican Party.
So the Clinton Foundation, the IRS scandal, the email scandal, the FBI thing, all that stuff, the way it's played out proves one thing to me, and that is that, yes, they were protecting the Democrats, but the reason why the Republicans didn't really push back and keep pushing the issue is because they're complicit too.
No kidding.
Right.
So I'm going to join a new party, folks. My party is going to be the America First Independent Party. How do you like that? The America First Independent Party. I'm joining it. You heard it here. That's a new party that I'm joining. You want to join with me, Paul? The America First Independent Party?
I think I've always been in it, but yes.
We're gonna find. Have you people on your comments? Tell me whether you want to join the American First Independent Party. The heck with these Democrats and these Republicans, all these oligarchies.
Right.
I want the People's Party. That's even better. The American People's Party.
Well, you know what they do? They contort things. They call us, they call them the Democrats, right? And it's supposed to mean, just because they're called Democrats, that means that they're for the people. And they've proven that they're not. So, I mean, the term doesn't really mean anything over time. So you have to be very careful about that. I just think the important thing to always remember is that if the establishment, the ruling class elite, are allowed to continue on the path that they're on, they will continue to do things that line their pockets and protect their interests, and we end up with what's left. And that's a sad commentary.
Paul, the middle class is evaporating as we speak. Yep. And the only way you get condensation is if you cool off and the rain comes back down. And then that is what all I think we ought to think about. Instead of stoking the fires and causing greater evaporation of the middle class, we have to reinforce it.
Right.
Close your borders. Bring back jobs. America First. By the way, I think a better name, Paul, is For the People Party. The For the People Party, part of the platform, is America First. One of the tenets, the underpinnings of it, right?
Right.
And, we're all Americans, folks. It's our country, not their country, not Hillary's country, Goldman Sachs' country, Warren Buffett's country, the Bush's country. They think they're dynasties.
Right.
They actually think they're dynasties, the Clintons and the Bushes. Oh, we replaced the Kennedys. Well, that was no great
Do
deal.
you remember when the presidential election started? It just seems like so long ago, and all they were talking about was who's it going to be, Bush or Clinton?
Yeah. And by the way, that's what it is. Because the Bushes were supposed to be against the Clintons, which meant heads I win, tails you lose.
Right.
And what happened is Donald Trump cut out that game plan. He eviscerated that part of the equation. So now they're stuck with Hillary alone. And Hillary is, in fact, the same.
Right.
Don't forget George W. Bush, the young one. He said, when asked the question, who are you going to be supporting for president? He said, you mean my brother or my sister-in-law?
Right.
You remember that?
Right.
But that wasn't tongue-in-cheek.
Right.
Some truth to that, my friend.
Right. Well, you know, when I was in college, I took a government or some type of, I don't know, political class. I don't remember the name of it. But the professor said, he referred to the revolving door elite. I think I've mentioned it before on the show. And that's essentially what runs this country. You talk about the oligarchs, and so the revolving door is, so the Democrats and the Republicans fight back and forth. We're in charge, we're in charge, no, we're in charge, no, we're in charge. And they go back and forth, and you know, the only time that the Democrats hate the Republicans is when they're trying to find out who's going to be the ultimate leader, right? But as soon as the election is over, they just kind of go along and do their thing, and then 4 years later they have that fight again. But it's always with the collateral damage is the middle class and the people around us, because it's them fighting over who's going to be in charge, but it has nothing to do with taking care of the interests of the people. Nothing.
Divide and conquer, Paul. That's as old as there is.
Yep.
So the idea is, if you divide the country, as they effectively have,
Yep.
and Obama's been the most guilty party of that.
Yes. Yeah.
If you divide the country, then you conquer it.
Right.
And that's what the oligarchy has done. They pit everybody against each other because they're up here on top of Mount Olympus.
Right.
You know, Zeus and Hera running the show.
As long as
and
they
they're
keep-
watching all these
Right.
plebes chopping each other up, the little sheep.
Yep.
Is it any coincidence, by the way, that in a country that gave us democracy, otherwise known as Greece, that the number one animal is a sheep, lamb, you know, to be fleeced?
I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah,
but
well,
yeah.
I mean, this is getting to be insane.
Right. Well, you know, and the thing that bothers me the most is a progressive country like Massachusetts has no inclination to ever do anything but support the Democrats. You know, and I'm not saying.
Wait a minute. Who goes to Harvard, my friend? Do you think the average common person in the city of Lynn goes to Harvard?
No.
So the people that go to Harvard, like Moulton, and all of the rest of them that go to Harvard, right?
The Kennedys.
They're I hate to tell folks, they're called elitists if you go to Harvard, Yale.
Right.
Am I right? Stanford.
Right. But
Berkeley.
I guess my point is, and I'm not suggesting that, especially now, I'm not suggesting that we should have, you know, a purple state where, you know, where every election it's either going to go Democrat or Republican. But every election we should be thinking outside the box and saying to ourselves, what's in the best interest of the people, not what we're being told by the media. By the way, the Boston Globe, the Channel 4, 5, and 7, the local news, all they do is bombard us with these great things about Hillary Clinton and these bad things about anybody who is not supporting of her.
Let me tell you how insidious this is. Are you familiar with Dana Perino?
Yes.
She's the darling of Fox, one of the darlings, right?
Right, and she used
the
to,
sweet,
she used to
cute
be
little
the chief spokesperson for George W. Bush.
So therefore, do you think that Dana Perino is objective when it comes to Trump?
Absolutely not. She despises him
That's right.
because of what he did to George's brother.
So she would sell out the American people to a congenital liar who's an oligarchist because of that.
Right. Yeah.
I don't have respect for people like that. Let me go to another darling of the Fox News, Megyn Kelly.
Right.
She spends every single night that she can vilifying Donald Trump, talking about him because she's the one that came up and tried to say that he just doesn't like women. You call them dogs, you call them this, you call them, remember, right from the get-go.
Right.
She's the one that did. Have you ever seen her not look like provocative and sensuous. She sells sexuality. Have you ever seen a major, and folks, this is hypocrisy at its best. Have you ever seen a national anchor that wasn't attractive?
Right, that's, you know.
Okay, so they're two-faced. Do you remember the vice president debate?
Yep.
Do you remember the moderator?
Who was the moderator for that? Was it?
She was the gal from the Philippines.
Oh, yes, right, yeah.
Everybody was commenting on her. You know what they commented on her? These are the supposed enlightened ones.
The holier than thou.
The holier than thou kept saying, wow, is she hot? Right. They kept saying, wow, she hot. They were talking about her sexuality. And yet they say to you, Paul, if you look at a girl that's eye candy, and you say, wow, that's eye candy. Oh, something's wrong with you, Paul. You're objectifying females. Right. Well, I'm sorry. Then don't dress provocatively. I mean, I'm not trying. Let me take that back before it's misunderstood, okay? I have 6 granddaughters who I love dearly, 2 daughters, 2 sisters, and a mother. And I understand how important, and I would not want anybody to vilify or say nasty things about any of them.
Right.
But there is a point at which we have to be honest. Men dress up and look good because of women, and women dress up and look good because of men and other women. You know, it's natural, isn't it? I mean, do we go out looking like bums? Or do we try to cast an image?
Sure.
It's called the birds and the bees.
Right. I get all that. All I will say is, you know, when you talk about racism and how, you know, racism is, what does Hillary say? That it's, Obama says it's, how does he put it? It's in our DNA, and she says that we're implicitly racist and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, what's this implicitly racist stuff?
You know, if you look at the hierarchy of the social order, if you will, in this country, you know, the top of the hierarchy is not, it's colorblind. It's beautiful people, and it's wealthy people, and it's people in power. All the elites.
So you're reinforcing what I said.
Yes. I'm saying what I said.
And if anybody's honest, people aspire to be attractive. People aspire to be wealthy. People aspire to superficiality. I'm not saying that I agree with it, folks. I'm not saying that I feel this way. I'm saying that's the reality. That's the truth. I mean, Hillary Clinton goes on to a debate wearing a jacket that costs $12,000. I have a hard time making my mortgage payments, okay?
Yeah.
I mean, doesn't anybody talk about this? Is Michelle Obama walking around with clothes from Target? No, she's at God forbid she has to go to Goldman Sachs, to Neiman Marcus.
Right.
That's not even in her league. And by the way, when Ivanka Trump went on to talk about her father at the convention, you know how much her dress cost?
$138.
$138 from her own line, okay? Right. So let's talk about it like it is. And Barack Obama's 2 daughters went to a state dinner. You know what their dresses cost? $20,000 a clip. So let's put things in perspective. You mentioned last week about the Clinton Global Foundation, in which they fly around on private jets everywhere to the tune of $50 million a year. Am I lying?
No.
Am I exaggerating?
No.
Folks, that's the elite.
Right.
That's the disconnect. And if I say it, impolitely, if I've said it in a way that's offensive, hey, I'm sorry. The truth has to come out as best as we can get.
And on that whole point, I just want to point out that the Clinton Foundation is a nonprofit organization of which the Clintons receive extraordinary financial benefit because everything that they do as part of their participation in the foundation is paid for by the foundation. Free jetting all over the world, big dinners, fundraisers, parties, all that kind of stuff, where they are able to sell the office that Hillary Clinton was selling, and ultimately sell the president's office if she wins. All that kind of stuff was all, and she should be paying taxes on that, and they're not. So I would argue that forgetting about Donald Trump's tax, this thing from 20 years ago, Hillary Clinton is probably violating the law in terms of her taxes because she is personally benefiting by things that are going on in the Clinton Foundation, even though she claims that she doesn't take any income from it.
Paul, look at the Clinton Foundation as an aquarium. And in the aquarium is a bunch of piranhas. So what happens is these piranhas are being subsidized in that holding tank to be unleashed on the public, paid for by donations. You got that?
Yep.
So anybody who is a hatchet person or a hitman for the Clintons is put there and fed while they're waiting to figure out where to place them and the administration for their benefit.
Right.
That's what it's all about. Wouldn't you like to have that?
Yes.
So would
Well,
I.
no, actually, I wouldn't. You know.
Oh, you're an honorable man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do that.
I'm glad you picked up on that. We have about a minute, Paul. Get it off your chest. I got off my chest. Folks, forgive me. Go ahead.
I'm speechless, Joe.
Why?
I mean, I've got everything off my chest I can. I guess if I had to say anything, it's like, Massachusetts, please wake up. Lynn, please wake up. You know, I'm not in love with Donald Trump's character, but I am in love with this country, and what he's doing is for us. We need to think about it in terms of us, not in terms of him, in terms of us.
That's well said, Paul. And I think that sums it all up. It's a binary choice, folks. It's the direction of your country from now and forever. This is very critical. Please take it seriously. Whatever choice you make, I'm going to abide by it. I may not like it, but I'm going to abide by it because I believe in democracy. So, until we meet again, have a great week.